good.
It does,
Thanks.
doesn't it?
Yeah.
Feels very good. So Jeni, thank you so much for being here. I got to meet Jeni at a conference that we were both speaking at like 6 months ago. And we were backstage, and I literally started drilling her with questions. Do you remember that moment?
Oh, yeah, over sandwiches.
Yeah, it was kind of, she was like rock star to me, and I just kind of wanted to learn from her. So it was an awesome conversation, and I really appreciate how you do business. And tonight, I want to pull out some interesting questions and things I've learned from you and watched over the last 6 months and previously. So let's start with your backstory. Tell us how Jeni's Splendid ice cream came about.
So I'm 41 years old. Actually, oh my gosh, I'll be 42 next month. I started making ice cream when I was 21. Professionally, I started my first business right after I turned 22. Ice cream business. So it's all like half my life ago. It's truly a part of my DNA at this point, I think. I mean, really, it's kind of become how I think. I grew up making ice cream. I grew up serving ice cream. I grew up listening to customers and buying ingredients to make ice cream every single day for the last, since 1995. Wow. So anyway, so how did I get into ice cream? Well,
yeah.
or just, that sort of moment. I was going to art school and at Ohio State University and studying fine arts and art history and working in a French pastry shop. And if there are anybody in here who studied art, you know that when you study art, everybody says, like everyone you meet, what are you studying? Oh, I'm studying fine art and art history. And they'll say, well, what are you going to do when you graduate? Do you have any plans? What are you going to do? You're going to go to grad school? Like, what's going on? And I think I always knew that I would be an entrepreneur. I mean, I grew up having businesses. That's how I played when I was a kid. But I was starting to think, well, what am I going to do? I'm probably not cut out to be a teacher. So I had this hobby on the side of perfuming, and I was like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to be a perfumer because it actually works. Like it's kind of, it's like using my hands, and I'm very connected to my sense of smell. And so I'd been collecting all these essential oils for years, or I started collecting them and had like for the last couple years, I had this huge drawer full of essential oils, and one of them that didn't have a scent. It was the essential oil of cayenne. It just had that physical property of heat on your tongue. So it sat in the back of my drawer for a couple of years. And one day I had the idea that I should mix it into some chocolate ice cream, because I would actually use it to cook sometimes, and make like a hot frozen ice cream or whatever. And so I did that. I mushed it into some cheap store-bought ice cream, and I took a bite, and it was frozen and cold, and then it was sweet, and then it sort of tasted like chocolate, because chocolate ice cream doesn't taste that chocolatey usually. And then it burst into flames in the back of my throat, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is it. And at that moment, the sky truly opened up for me. Like I knew at that moment that ice cream was everything. Because I was everything to me, or that would become everything. Now,
that's actually a good thing to tweet. Ice cream is everything. That's
right. Well, but so for me, all the things that I was doing at the time, everything I was interested in, it all came together for me. So it really was like this swirling around of everything I was interested in. And I looked at that huge drawer of essential oils, which some of them are edible, some not, but I made ice cream out of all of them. And so now I'm making rose petal ice cream, but like the rose petal oil that I was buying was, $25 a drop. So a drop goes a long way, but it's beautiful. So rose petal ice cream is really gorgeous. And then I'm taking it to a friend's house. Then I started steeping ingredients in cream, and I used my creme brulee recipe. And anyway, 6 months later, I went into business because I realized that I knew chefs that could use this ice cream. I mean, you have an almond cake with a beautiful Damascus rose petal or Bulgarian rose oil ice cream next to it. It's a gorgeous thing. So anyway, I knew nothing about business in 1996 when I started Scream Ice Cream. But I just set sail, really jumped off a cliff and tried to figure it out. Closed Scream in 2000, opened Jeni's in 2002 with it's a bigger story and reflection of what I did wrong and fix all that stuff.
And since then, I know you continually innovate ice cream and creating new flavors and all that stuff. And you share all your recipes, or a lot of your recipes, with the world. Why do you do that, and how do you stay innovating and creating new things?
Well, first of all, the recipes that I created in the book are created with the limitations, I guess, of a home kitchen in mind. So when at home you have different, you have different equipment. Your ice cream machine, for instance, doesn't cost $100,000 like mine. So we have to deal with that, and so. I worked backward from the machine, which is actually a super fun project when you start to learn about ice cream, and then you think, well, I like to apply that to home cooking. How could I change? Because the recipe in ice cream cookbook and in dessert cookbooks is really, 300 years old. It's exactly the same in every single cookbook. And so I was like, well, how can we make it more like American scoop shop ice cream? Because, if I'm going to do a cookbook, it has to be Jeni's ice creams. Like, if you go and get Thomas Keller's cookbook, you want to make his gazpacho, the same one you had in his restaurant. And I felt like it should have the same flavor, texture, body, and finish as what you get in our stores. And you ought to be able to do that at home and then make it yours through your own flavors. And so anyway, doing that. So it is a different recipe. But we always talk about, I'm sorry.
Yeah, we talked about this one time about how I talk with a lot of artists and people copy things, right? So whether it's ice cream or a cake or photography, Jeremy's photography, we are all going to put something out into the world and someone else is going to replicate it. And how do you handle that?
Well, it's not about the thing, usually. I mean, maybe in art it's different, but it's about everything else. In business, it's about execution, right? It's about operations, it's about doing it right, which is so hard. It's not about the idea, it's about doing it. And then not just doing it once, but doing it and keeping pushing it. And so, I was inspired by your opening speech because I don't know if we've ever talked about this actually, but the mission at Jeni's has been, since 2002, very, very simple. Make better ice creams, bring people together. And equal, because we know that people come together over ice creams. I mean, I spent so many years just serving ice cream, and I know people, you don't go alone for ice cream. You go with somebody, and you learn about somebody. You get to know somebody better over ice cream. But that first part of the mission, make better ice creams, isn't really just about ice cream. It's about getting better every day. And it's about first, not just accepting that we're not very good right now or we're not as good as we can be, but making that a part of who we are. So and not letting it stop us, right? Not letting perfection, that idea of perfection, halt it all, but knowing that there's this beautiful ice cream that's out in the future somewhere. I mean, I have this vision of and it's really not about flavor, it's about body and texture of the ice cream. And one day we'll achieve it. And we sometimes do now, but we don't always.
Interesting. So you and I had this interesting conversation about how you view your company. You don't like to call it a business, right? You like to call it a company. Explain that.
I mean, it's just more fun, but, business and company is the same. But I love the word company, and I use it all the time because company, the word means that you're not alone. The very word means that you're a company of people. Growing up in art and ballet, and you have companies of people who get together and come together and achieve these wonderful things. And so that idea of us being together and every person and every person's part of the puzzle is really important. And also our company includes not just the people who I work with every day and all of the people in our company, and we're about 765 people, but it's our growers, both near and far. We have lots of growers near our kitchen. We have many further out and even international, but we're we like direct trade, so we like to work directly with those people, so they're a part of our community. And of course our customers, because it's a never-ending loop of we put a flavor out to see what happens, and then we listen to what people say, and we don't have to R&D it to death, because when we put it out in the world, we hear back, or when we take it away from, we hear back too.
Seasonal flavors, there's some discrepancies in what should stay or should go.
But what do you guys think about Oregon fir ice cream? Because I found one of our old containers the other day from a few years ago when I did Oregon fir. Anyway, it's going in the museum.
Great. Okay, so you've had a rough 6 months, right? So when I first met you, you were on an all-time high, and then this thing happened. So obviously this community, we talk a lot about problems and things that exist in our communities, and you had a problem that you had to fix. Can you explain what happened? And we'll explain what happened first, and then we'll talk about how you came about it.
I'm going to have a very good crisis management speech next year. The way that I think about crisis right now, and I think I am building that speech, is that the first 3 or 4 months of massive crisis, you're in survival mode. So you're throwing you just darts to the wall. You're just trying to figure out any path that works because you have to survive. You got to live to the next day, and we've just crossed over into what I'm calling the stabilizing phase. So we're trying to recreate process or whatever. And we actually have basically reimagined our company, and then we'll be back to normal, sort of thriving, hopefully in a few months. What happened was that we found a pint of ice cream in Lincoln, Nebraska, that had trace amounts of listeria in it. And listeria is a microorganism that grows everywhere. It's part of our garden and good and evil microbes that surround us every single day. And they're in, it's in every kitchen, it's in every production plant, it's everywhere, it's prevalent. And so it was in our ice cream. So we had to make the decision, what do we do? The FDA is there and they're asking us, what are we gonna do? In that moment, you have a lot of options. You can call your lawyer, you can get a lot of people involved, you can spend many days, and the FDA is fine with that, deciding what to do, how much you want to recall, how much you want. In the end, we decided we can't wait, let's recall it all. Within 12 hours of basically, learning about it, getting the tests, we had recalled every drop of ice cream out there in the world from our kitchen, 265 tons. Wow. And we were sending it to an anaerobic digester, which is actually kind of awesome. It makes it into energy and whatever. We also brought a lot back to our kitchen to test, and we only ever found one more pint that had a little bit of it, which made us feel actually pretty good. And then that set off a massive series of events, which was we now have a zero tolerance rule for any of that. Now, see, in Ohio, nobody had to do listeria testing. As an entrepreneur, anybody in here a food entrepreneur? In the food business? Okay, so when you're in the food business, it's complicated, but when you're an entrepreneur, you kind of rely on licensing and inspections and your state authorities, and so we had done that, and so we have, it's just almost like getting your driver's license, although it's actually not, where you go study, you take classes, you learn all about it, you take tests, you have the inspectors come in, you actually build your facility with them and whatever, and in Ohio, the one thing that they didn't require was listeria testing, which I think is changing now, and certainly we will do it forevermore. But anyway, lots and lots of huge changes, but in the end, something we needed to learn, and we kind of learned it the hard way, but it's all good. I'm going to go out on a speaking tour starting this fall to work with emerging food entrepreneurs and people of companies our size and probably smaller to help people understand that too. Because in March we had just gone through a third-party audit. We'd had, just so many inspections and everything passed perfectly. Yeah. So that's the complicated and tough thing about being in the food business. You really should have a zero tolerance. It's almost impossible rule,
And what I loved watching it from here was you shared freely your story with every customer. You said, this is what's happening, this is the choices we're making, and you communicated so well, which was hard. I'm sure it was.
Yeah, and if everybody would do it, it'd be a lot easier. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's going to happen. Listeria is in every ice cream plant. It's in every food facility. It's in our cars. It's everywhere. It's going to happen, and we have to figure out how to not have it happen. We certainly don't want anybody to get sick. And we just have to be open about it,
So tell me what you learned about your team through that process.
It's funny because we always like to brag about ourselves and think that, we've got, we always say we hire for talent, hustle, and guts, and that we're, whatever. And you say that, but then when you get into this crisis place, that's when you learn that, you know what I mean? And so it was such a bonding and wonderful experience to go from sailing along and everything great and a golden bridge in front of us to that all fell off and everybody there in our company jumping in to help and creating the phone networks and all the things you have to do. There's so much you have to do when you do this, and anyway,
it's almost it's almost like when you hit this moment of conflict in any team, that's where your team really shows up. I was asking her
and that's
earlier,
what you hire for, and that's why it's so important.
Yeah, she didn't lose anyone from her, from the corporate side, the office. They had some people left, you said in local stores, but I thought it was just a great testimony to the leadership that you have and how you dealt with it. So walk us through, if no one's ever been to a Jeni's, or if they've been there, when you think someone walks through the door, what's the experience you want them to have?
Well, first you're going to get bombarded by the smell of waffle cones because it's not, It's just everywhere. Like we're making them all day long, and and we also make conversation cookies. So they're like fortune cookies, but they're done on a waffle cone. And then we put conversation starter questions in the fortune cookies, which is really fun because, so if you're getting a sundae, you know, now it's like a date, right? So we update the questions every once in a while. But we're making those things all day long in the store, so you get that smell, and it kind of wafts out of the store. But then, if you're there during peak times, you'll probably see a line. And we like to give great service when you get up to the counter, so we know you're waiting in line. And then when you get with your sort of server, you can taste any flavor. You can taste all the flavors if you want to, and people encourage you to do that. And our team behind the counter, it's funny because service is something that I talk about all the time in our world or whatever, and I always say, like, nobody can pay you. Like, I can pay you to, scoop ice cream the right size, and I can pay you to show up on time, and I can pay you to make sure you get the corners when you mop and all that stuff. But you cannot pay people. I can't pay you for kindness. I can't pay you to be to look people in the eye and to be respectful and to smile and to hug people with your eyes and all of that stuff. You can't pay people to do that. But it's also not free. You give that to the world freely from your own heart, and when you do that, it comes back to you. And I know that. I mean, I've experienced that so many times in my life and all throughout my life or whatever. And so I think that we have this incredible service team, which is which means so much to us, and then of course the ice cream. We hope the ice cream at the end, we hope the ice cream is really great because that's all the back end stuff too that like I work on every day or whatever. But
so the day for you, and you still like work on the recipes, right? You're still
I create all the recipes.
You still do, yeah. And okay, so there's this interesting thing. I started talking to people about Jeni's, and they said, "Oh yeah, so they're from Atlanta, right?" And I assume this is every community that you're in. People think that you are a local brand, a local maker, which I think is an amazing thing. How do you do that? Because you're from Columbus, right? And I'm not saying that to ruin their perspective here. I'm saying it because I think there's something unique that you've done to feel part of the local communities. What is that?
Well, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I think it's something, I think we really care about what we're doing. We really care about our team. The world is in some ways so much smaller now, and we can connect directly with so many, we can have, I'll tell you one thing that I think, and that is that community isn't like what surrounds you, and it's not like the people and the places that surround you. I mean, this isn't how I think about it anymore. That's more of a 20th century way of thinking about it. Community goes with you, follows you. It's community is everybody that you affect from your action or inaction in your life, and that can be everywhere, right? But it's these people that you have connections to, and you have your sort of inner circle and all the circles around, and I just feel like we connect with lots of people, and I truly feel like a citizen and of the world, or whatever, and not necessarily. It's just not the same as just being sort of locked into your one place or whatever. I mean, I really feel like a member of the community in Atlanta and Nashville. And
so, what new flavors are coming that we should be watching for?
Well, churro's coming. That one's the one that I made today, or I approved the packaging today. We've been working on it for a long time, but it's so good. It's really good. It's really good. So churro, we'll have all the holiday flavors. And then post-holiday, we're working on American classics. So we're going to do like pre-1978 American classics, and make it sort of an exhibition of, that. We do pre-1978 because we're trying to avoid Ben & Jerry's. I mean, love Ben & Jerry's, but like we're not going to make Chunky Monkey or whatever. So it's all pre-1978, but it's kind of fun. So we're going to present it as if it's like this, global exhibition of pre-1978 American classic ice cream flavors or whatever. And so that's going to be really fun. So we have like Cherries Jubilee with Luxardo cherries and really good pralines and cream.
That sounds great. Well, you told me one story on the phone when we talked a couple weeks ago that I thought would be cool to share, because you're in the middle of one of the hardest times in this season that you've been in, and you got a handwritten note from somebody here, right? So who was that, and what happened? I didn't ask your permission for this.
Well, Woody. Is that
so? Woody Falk.
Yes.
Yeah.
And is Woody here? Yeah, maybe
He's in
somewhere.
the back corner. He's watching.
Well,
Woody doesn't know
so
this either. He's like,
we
yeah.
had first of all, we had an incredible outpouring of support from our community, our online community, just our community in general, and people sent notes from all over, which was wonderful, and we put them up on our walls, and we printed out what people said on Twitter and Facebook and everything. It was so meaningful. So we cried around it and all of that, and then I get this handwritten note from Woody, which also contained a personal check for $100, which I thought was just like the sweetest thing ever, and kind of blew my mind, like the kindness. Like what can I do? Well, I'll send her $100, or and it was a meaningful moment to us in the office, and then we went out and promptly spent it on liquor. Sorry.
So listen, I love the story because in the hardest moment, this handwritten note made a huge deal. You even said to me, you said it kept me going, and she said
somebody from another company too who would have an understanding of all of this.
So I wanted to make sure. She said, "Can you make sure that I get to meet Woody?" So Woody, at the end of this, I want you guys to meet down here because it was a huge part for her and her team and encouragement. And I want you to know that I'm still a huge fan of Jeni, and Jeni's ice cream. I'm a huge fan of yours. You taught me that entrepreneurs are the new rock stars. You have encouraged me by what you've created and how you dealt with this problem. So
Thanks.
Thank you for being here. Let's thank Jeni.
Thank you. Thank you.
Perfect.
I gotta go find Woody now.
He should be right over there.